Hello, today I'd like to show you how to make a snowball block. We're using 5-inch squares as our starting piece today, and here I've put on some little corners around on each of the 4 corners of the square, and that is what they call a snowball block. More often than not, these little triangles are actually a little bit bigger in proportion to the square, but today I just wanted a small corner on there, and very often the snowball block is used as an alternate block because it helps form a secondary pattern throughout a quilt with another block. But today we're just making the snowball, and I will show you that they can go together just as they are, making a very effective quick and easy quilt with 5-inch squares. So to start off with, you need to have some 5-inch squares obviously, and another colour of fabric, which we're just going to cut into little squares. We're going to cut 1.5-inch squares. So I've got some small strips here that are 1.5 inches wide, and I've got 4 strips layered, so I can cut 4 fabrics at one time, and I need 4 corners for each of the 5-inch squares, so that works quite well. So I'm just going to cut, using the board as a guide for my measuring, I'm going to cut 1.5 inches, and because the strip was 1.5 inches wide, they're now 1.5 inch square. Now I'm going to be sewing each corner onto each corner of the 5-inch square. But I think it would be helpful to have, because this is a darker fabric, I'm going to use a white marking pencil, and I think it would be quite helpful to have your diagonal marked. So we're going to sew along the diagonal. So just with a white marking pencil, or any white pencil will actually work, just draw yourself that line down the centre diagonal of each of the squares, and this will just help you sew. Even though it's only small, it's quite helpful to have a little guide for that sewing line. I don't always use a line on my when I'm sewing these corners on, and sometimes I wander off where I want to be. So I've got my 4 squares, my 5-inch square, and they've all got a diagonal marked on them. So I'm going to place a square on the corner and just sew right across. So this would be exactly the same method for sewing bigger corners on. You would just have a bigger square for a more traditional snowball block. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and sew along that diagonal line. And I'm going to sew one to each corner of my 5-inch square. And this makes quite a fun quilt, just with a whole variety of different squares. They don't have to be particularly coordinated, although I have actually got a nice range of 5-inch squares from a range of fabrics today. These are some delicious William Morris type designs. I was very fortunate when I was in the UK to be, by chance, at a place where William Morris had lived and be able to look through some of his works. Okay, so I've sewn my 4 corners on. Snip my threads off. And now we don't need that little extra bit, and even though it's not very much, it's a good idea to trim it off because it just makes it very bulky on your corners. So lay your 1/4 inch line of your ruler, if your ruler has one, over your actual sewing line and cut 1/4 inch away. And lucky last. And so now I'm just going to press those corners out. So just laying the iron on there and then just pushing that corner over, and it should just press out nice and firm like that. And there I have my little snowball block. As easy as that. So I have actually made a few others that I can then show you how I would put those together. So if I lay them side by side, I'm going to form a little square in between. And what I found is that because some of the fabrics are quite busy and normally just joined all together could end up looking possibly too busy, by doing something like this with this little plain bit in between, it just seems to calm everything down quite nicely. So you can see as I'm laying them together here how that's forming this nice pattern in between, little diamondy square on point in between. And so you can just continue on adding, and so you can put many fabrics together that are all different and all possibly quite busy, but because of that plainer little corner that I've popped in there, that ends up bringing it into something a little bit calmer and more, somehow makes the fabrics more visible for you to see. So I have actually done a pattern in amongst my 5-inch patterns. It's available to purchase on my website, gourmetquilter.com, and I've called the pattern Snowball using 5-inch squares, and you can see on the diagram that that's the layout, like I've just shown you there, that I've used in that pattern. So just another idea for the 5-inch squares, quick and easy, just something sort of plain but with a very nice variety of other fabrics that brings them all together. Thank you.